Hey guys, I'm Mono, and today I'm going to talk about everything wrong with Hella Loose. Now, Hella Loose is my favorite game right now. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I would recommend it to basically everyone that has ever enjoyed a Battlefield game and, has ever wanted for some more realism. But yeah, the game is amazing, but there's also a lot of things wrong with it. So I'm going to talk about what I think are the most important issues that the game has. Of course, it has more issues than the ones I will talk about, but in this list, I will try and prioritize those that I think are most important and create the most inconvenience for the player base as a whole. As a reminder, if you want to check me out live playing Hella Loose or playing other games, then please follow me on Twitch. I do not live stream much on YouTube because Twitch just has a better quality stream overall. So find me there on Twitch, link down in the video description, and also check out our podcast together with Terry Dactyl and Raz Bora, where we talk about games. That's called Mono's Game Club, and you can find the link down below. All right, let's talk about everything wrong with Hella Loose, and let's start with updates. And I'm gonna side with the console people on this one. Console players haven't seen an update to the game basically since the game launched in October. Since then, the PC version has had one major update, Update 11, and also one patch, which was substantial in terms of fixes and overall changes to the game. Console players have seen none of this, and it's way overdue for them to get an update. And even though that update is incoming, I think the overall strategy of updates for this game is messed up. There's always been this focus on major updates every so often that bring a variety of different changes across the entire game. For example, bringing in new vehicles, new maps, new mechanics, and very often those changes aren't well documented, like the time they nerfed the running speed without even a patch note, or when they changed garrisons so you couldn't destroy them using the artillery anymore. Those are major changes that radically affect and alter the gameplay of the game, and not only should they be documented, but maybe they shouldn't all come out together in a single update. I wish the game received more updates more frequently and have them be smaller in size. Like, for example, when they changed the barbed wire, they made Utah Beach, they turned it from one of the best maps in the game to one of the worst middle point maps in the entire game, because the points WN7 and WN4, with the changes to barbed wire, there's way too much barbed wire around those points. You can't really get in, so if you get those points at the middle point in Utah, the map really suffers from it. And this should be a simple change of just taking out some of the barbed wire or making it destructible like the player-based barbed wire is. That should have been a quick change after the barbed wire update, but it took several months for us to get a different version of Utah with less barbed wire, which we have currently, but it still needs some work. And it's the same with pretty much everything in the game. There's a lot of minor fixes that should get worked on and should be released on their own when they are fixed, instead of having to wait until a major new update. The player base would really benefit from more smaller patches, especially when targeting bug fixes and stuff like that. Speaking of which, let's talk about performance and quality of life features. This game is in drastic need of a performance update. Playing this either on console or on PC, there's definitely some performance issues. You really need a top-of-the-line PC to be able to play this at a high frame rate, and even then you still get stutters from the DX12, I think from the shader caching thing, which should be done once at the beginning of the game to get it over with. I'm not sure if that's 100% the issue, but whatever the case, we need more performance updates and we need quality of life fixes. I've already talked about the barbed wire needing to be destructible or some other solution being found to these points that previously didn't really have barbed wire around them, and now that they do, that changes things, that changes the map, and that needs to be addressed. The other problem is voice sliders. We need volume sliders for the command chat, the squad chat, and the local chat, and we need them now. It's getting really annoying to play squad leader and have a bunch of people on command chat not willing to shut up, and you being completely unable to listen to your squad, which has much more relevance to you, like 99% of the time. There's almost no case in which I want to listen to the command chat over my own local squad chat. Command chat communication should be mostly done through markers, and should be extremely concise. However, that's not usually the case. And if you're playing squad leader, it just gets really bothersome to not be able to listen to your squad and have to ask them to repeat over and over again what they're saying, because command chat isn't willing to shut up and you can't, prioritize your squad chat over them. This is an issue that's been solved on console. We have volume sliders on consoles, and going back to what I said earlier about updates, this should be fixed as soon as humanly possible with an update on its own. It doesn't need to be integrated into another update, and we need this problem solved now. The game already handles the audio differently because there is a different color for the person speaking on each of the audios, so there's clearly a way that the game identifies which audio is coming in from which of the different channels and applying a different volume value for each of those. The game seems to already do this. I'm no game designer, but as far as I can tell, it already does this. We just need the volume sliders in the UI. So why is this not here if it's such a simple problem and such a basic thing that would greatly increase everyone's experience of playing squad leader? It's just mind-numbing that it's not here yet. The other issue that is also quite confusing as to why we don't have one is the fact that we don't have a tutorial. And I'm gonna keep saying this over and over again in each video that I get a chance. The game desperately needs, if not a tutorial, at least a splash screen that says, hey, this game is about controlling the map through garrisons. Building spawn points, building team spawn points is the single most important thing in the entire game. It is the single most important factor at deciding where your team is going to be on the map and where the enemy team is going to be on the map. It is the basis of the entire game. And knowing this and learning this from day one, the first minute you launch the game, is incredibly important towards having good matches in Hella Loose. Matches through the past few weeks, due to some sales, have been flooded with new players that don't understand what's going on, and when that happens, the entire experience is diminished and gets really bad for basically everyone involved. When people don't understand the garrison situation, don't go ahead and build garrisons when they're playing squad leader, the entire Hella Loose game experience is basically deleted and replaced with something that is absolutely painfully frustrating to play. I had written down some stuff about movement, but I think it also qualifies as a quality of life issue, so let's talk about it here. Aiming while prone is a huge problem in this game, and it really shouldn't, because it's a super important thing to be able to do right. And what happens is, when you're prone, it seems like your body is attached to a specific polygon depending on where your torso is, and depending on the angle of that polygon, you can either aim as low as you want or not. And that makes it so when you're moving while prone, you constantly have to check if you're going to actually be able to aim where you want to hit an enemy if they come out, out of the woods or a house or whatever it is that you're looking at. It is extremely frustrating. It doesn't work as it should, and it shouldn't be an issue. It should be worked on ASAP, because it's an actual important part of the movement to be able to do correctly. The other problem I have with the movement is that you get stuck on random things too often, either on the lip of a street side, like a sidewalk, or on a small branch or a small stone. You usually have to hop quite a bit around to be able to not get stuck in those forest maps, and obviously that makes you get seen more easily. So overall, just moving around in the game is less ideal than it should, and it should be a focus for development. Moving on to other issues that are more gameplay related, the whole artillery spam, camping the HQ to get rid of the artillery with the recon, is maybe the worst and most boring gameplay loop ever in a multiplayer shooter. There is no way around this. The only counter to the enemy's artillery is to camp the HQ spawn with your recon squad, with either one of them or both of them. That's really the only counter that the game offers to that mechanic. This obviously is less than ideal. Nobody enjoys this mechanic, not the recon squad that's doing the camping, not the guys that are trying to run the artillery while getting camped. It's annoying for all parties involved. It sucks. It's just the worst. And they either need to remove the artillery from HQ and make it like a buildable thing using the engineer so you can build it like further ahead and has a more limited range or something to that effect. Supposedly this will get changed with the mortar squads. Supposedly there's going to be mortar squads, and that's going to be the artillery, and it's going to be like a more close range thing. But the current situation right now in the game has gone on for way too long, and it's time for a change, and this needs to be a priority. This is the most boring and poorly developed part of the entire game, in my opinion, and it just needs to get solved, because nobody enjoys getting completely dumped by the arty without any real way to counter it, and nobody enjoys countering it because it's really boring, because it's just camping an HQ. So yeah, the whole arty mechanic, it needs a rework from like the ground up. The second thing that I think also needs a major rework is the way tanks work. So right now, I won't get really into it explaining how tanks work and everything, but the problem is right now, the only real counter to a heavy tank is another heavy tank. There's no nuance, no way of damaging a heavy tank with a medium if you're facing the front, which used to be a thing earlier back in the, like a year ago or something. Tanks were much different, and they were actually way more fun because they had weak points that you had to know, and shooting at them would give you an advantage over your opponent in an even engagement, or even when going against a heavier tank than yours. So that nuance was completely removed from the game, and now we have this really binary system where shots will either go in or not, depending if you're shooting at the front or the side or the rear of the tank. And it's basically as simple as that. The current tanking situation since this latest update is one that is extremely boring, at least for me. Like, I haven't played tanks a lot because I'm finding it to be beyond boring to play tanks in this game. If you've ever played a tank game like World of Tanks, the nuance to, ricocheting shots from the enemy by angling your tank or looking for weak spots that you can exploit, that is completely absent from Hell Let Loose. And the system we have that replaces that is so simple that there really can't be any major enjoyment from the gameplay itself, because it's so binary that it really just boils down to who lands the first shot. Whoever lands the first shot is going to win the tank engagement, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Medium or light tanks are irrelevant when there's a heavy tank present, so that doesn't help either. And just overall, it's a really simplistic system that doesn't add a lot to the game, and it lacks any nuance to actually be fun. So we need a major rework that introduces either weak points or some other mechanic, like maybe different ammo types, or ideally both, to make tanking actually fun, engaging, and rewarding. Because the problem right now is that it's not rewarding at all to destroy another tank, because tank battles are really simple and they are done as soon as you can reload twice. So, I would like to see some more nuance. Tank battles lasting longer, for example. I've heard rumors that they might be introducing some HP model, which I am against. By the way, I think the weak point system that they had earlier worked just fine, and would like to either see that back or see that and a mix of the current system. I don't know, but right now tanks are, at least in my opinion, they are the weakest part of the game by far. And lastly, we have resource nodes. Resource nodes are just go ahead and build them as close as you can to the HQ at the beginning of the game, and then completely forget about them unless maybe a enemy recon team gets to destroy one. The entire node mechanic is boring. I would just remove them from the game if I could, and just make the resources stable and not have to engage with the whole building nodes thing, which doesn't really provide any value to anyone. There's the cool idea of, for example, the manpower node resetting the supply guys cooldown on the ammo, on the supply box, and that is all cool, but unless you have to forcibly build the nodes next to garrisons or something, which could be a way to do this, that mechanic doesn't really get used unless it's an offensive map and people know what they're doing. There's also the mechanic of the munitions node, replenishing your cooldown on your explosive ammo and munitions box. That mechanic is also largely unused. So something needs to be done about the nodes, either completely remove them from the game or actually make them a relevant part of the gameplay. I've said previously in the feedback forum on Discord that I would like to see, for example, AT guns being limited to only being able to be built next to a munitions node, for example, like within a certain radius of a munition node. This would eliminate the AT gun spam that we have in the game, where a single squad can just build an AT gun wherever they want without any restrictions, and that has a fundamental impact on the tank gameplay, and just overall in the game's design. Doesn't really make sense for an AT gun to pop out of nowhere at a moment's notice. You know, tying them to the nodes, for example, and tying garrisons to node in some way, like say you can only build nodes close to a garrison, and then you can only build the AT gun close to the node. That would at least give some cohesion and some benefit from actually building those nodes. You would have the area of effect thing of it reducing the supply guy's cooldown on the supply box. Something like that actually incorporates them into the gameplay. Right now, they are this completely relegated to, you know, the borders of the map and just the 5 first minutes of every game or something. They are really useless. They don't really add anything to the game of value. I'd like to see them either drop the idea entirely or use the idea to better perfect the gameplay loop of other mechanics in the game. Say, for example, allowing a tank to get its munitions back without having to go back to HQ by building some sort of supply station next to a fuel node. That would at least, you know, do something with the entire idea. But right now, it's this just forgotten mechanic that's relegated to the borders of the map, and it's actually really boring to engage with. Alright, and that's gonna be it for what I consider is everything wrong with Hella Loose. Now, there's a lot more things, as I mentioned, that I could talk about. For example, the fact that we need more maps, desperately so. We need more maps. The last maps that we received, which were Stalingrad and Kursk, weren't, you know, really enjoyed by the community. I really like Stalingrad, but Kursk, you know, it's not the greatest of maps. So if you have any of your own ideas of what the game desperately needs to get changed or fixed or whatever, then please share that below. I know there's a bunch of people that constantly ask for like more accurate gun models or, you know, more realism. I'm not one of those persons. I don't think, you know, having a better, more accurate sight for the Thompson, for example, would, you know, dramatically make the game better. It won't. I think all of the things that I did mention would make the game different and better overall. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.